Hello, I'm the Smoking Cheddar, and I'm almost certain that you already knew that. Today is the last of the ground deep dive, the infantry. So, guys, as always, make sure your partner's busy watching some sort of 21 Dresses or whatever movie they want to watch. Make sure your headphones are in, you've got a drink. Make sure you've got yourself a snack. And today, gentlemen, I have slightly more than a snack. I have my meal with me today. This is, for those of you who are interested, if not you can skip ahead. This is lettuce, fresh onion, grilled red pepper with black olives, diced pickled gherkin, with jellified garden mint that I made myself, with grilled chicken. The sauce is Crucial's burger sauce that comes from Australia. We've got some grenade hot sauce from here in the UK, and we've got a tiny bit of tamarind, tangy tamarind sauce to go in on top of that. I've got two of these because I'm hungry and it is lunchtime. So, guys, without further ado, as always, we will be looking at the tech. We'll be looking at the attributes and the tech, and then we'll be looking at the officers and how we can use them, and we'll look at some scenarios as well towards the end. So let's get stuck into the attributes. So what we'll do is we'll go with the 4-star, just the baseline unit, to compare the attributes because they're all slightly different. So this is obviously the Martyr infantry at 4-star, and we've got the secondary weapon of the RGD 33 grenade that deals 63 across the board. We have an armour multiplier of 200 that will obviously go up as the unit scales, and we've got main weapon of 14, armour of 28, and fortification of 14. We've got the Vanguard attributes here with the M1918 grenade with 77 across the board. We've got a 210 multiplier, which again that stays the same as the unit scales. We've got a main weapon damage of 17, an armor damage of 36, and a fortification of 17. And lastly, we have the Lib with a Mark 1 grenade that's 70 across the board, with a armor damage multiplier at 200 and 14, 28 and 14 respectively. So these units, while they do similar things, are all ever so slightly different. So depending on how you want to min-max your infantry will depend really heavily on what infantry you have and what direction you want to go with it. But what we're going to do is, before we get into that, we will look at the tech tree. We're only really concerned with what we can do in silver games, not necessarily gold games so much, but mostly silver games. So we're not really looking at the modern tech tree, we're only really looking at the advanced. And what we're concerned with here is the end picture, first and foremost, which is concrete bunker. Concrete cast bunkers have the advantage of being thermal and sound insulated and fire resistant. That's the description. But we get a bunker damage resistant coefficient bonus of up to 10%. What is that and what does it mean? Damage reduction coefficient for bunker infantry. So much like you have a coefficient damage, a coefficient heal, a coefficient shield that scales with those respective attributes, this will make your infantry into a soak unit that you can use to start fights on bases. This is what you need. But this also applies to all three factions. So keep that in mind, because much like the MBT, while we can min-max things, we have a very large degree of flexibility here with infantry. Very large. We'll start from the bottom up with the mid-tree 3 pictured text, because these are camp specific and you'll see where things are going pretty shortly. So smoke bomb. reduces the prep time of Liberty infantry smoke bombs by 1.5 seconds and increases their duration by 0.25 seconds. Now, we haven't covered the units yet, but this is quite relevant. Forlorn Hope increases the critical strike rate of Vanguard Division infantry normal attacks by 5% and boosts the firepower of all allied troops within its protection range by 3%. This is where we're going to start seeing a bit of a divergence in what we can and cannot do with infantry. And this is really good if you keep this in the back of your mind, because this massively affects what officers you might want to choose. And lastly, we have conscripts, my favourite. Martyr Watch infantry take 5% less normal attack damage and increases the damage resistance of all troops in their protection range by 1%. You can see I've already unlocked this. That should give you an indication of where I'm going at the minute, which will be apparent in the 2.0 video I promised at the end of the last video, which will be coming after this video. Don't get ahead of yourselves. The naval videos will be coming. It's going to take time. Now, depending on what you want to do with your infantry will depend on which direction you want to move your tech and what sort of things you want to look at. There are a few things that are always worth picking up though, however, and that's always going to be bonus HP. More HP means more survivability out in the field. More survivability means obviously you can deal more damage, or you can do more soaking, or you can do your job for your alliance better. So this is key. If you are going down the damage trees, you're definitely going to want to pick up the triple intensities, because that is going to be magnificent for you. But again, we'll cover that towards the end with the scenarios, but keep that in mind. And of course, if you're going down the tanking tree, the inverse of which is you're going to want to focus quite heavily on the damage resistance of the three types of damage output from infantry, artillery, and from tanks. Again, if you're going down the tanking side of things, this is what you're probably going to want to be looking at as well. Now, if you're using the secondary ability like the smoke bomb, you're probably going to want to be focusing on this. And now you can see how infantry is now becoming one of the most diverse units on the battlefield. In any other, the only time you've got more diversity in a tech tree is probably the artillery, but at the same time you've still got the restriction brought forwards like you do with the tanks, like the MBTs. The MBTs, there's 3 different types of MBTs, and they can be min-maxed in various different directions. The same with the infantry, but at the same time the infantry have a lot of more specific abilities about them, like the artillery does. So we're seeing how this can be utilized already. We're only halfway through the tree. Of course, we have troop damage resistance, which also gets applied to base. We have troop damage intensity, again, which also is applied to the base, so keep that in mind as well, depending on what you're choosing. Now, I wasn't going to slide this one in, but I will. Infantry speed. It does pay to keep pace with the tanks, especially if you're going field or you're going support. It pays to keep pace with them. So anyway, we're interested in what is above my head right here in these little tiny boxes next to the picture, because this tells us all we need to know about the infantry. It tells us everything that if we want to min-max the unit, what direction we can take it. So if we're looking to tank bases, then this is the box that will tell us the information if that infantry unit is the better option or a slightly worse option. I say slightly worse because of concrete bunkers at the end of the tech tree. They're all really good options to tank with. It's just that some are better than others. And we'll go through this one. This is the Martyr infantry, obviously. And we can see that the infantry counts as super heavy, medium, main, heavy, and is counted by RL and big guns. So, the unit features. Fortified bunkers. Capable of entering bunker mode to reduce incoming damage, modern infantry can also protect allied non-fortification ground force troops within 2 map grids. This reduces their damage taken by 4% and can stack up to 12%. First aid. Uses first aid to quickly recover HP when not engaged in combat. You do not need those little tiny special abilities where you can heal over time. It comes with one built in. So that is all infantry. Keep that in mind. Now this is camp bonus specific to Martyr. Higher HP but lower firepower than infantry from other camps. Well, that's good if you're using it for tanking. And enhanced bunkers receives less damage than infantry from other camps while in bunker mode. Again, this is indicating to me that if you're going to tank with infantry, then Martyr infantry is probably the one you want. And that's pretty obvious through the camp bonus. So moving on to Liberty. Again, obviously the unit feature is the same. We get heal over time effect and we can reduce incoming damage for nearby units. Now it says 12, obviously. It's 4% per infantry bunker. And then obviously if you have 3 of them that surround a super heavy tank, that means that super heavy tank is now receiving 12%, 4% for each infantry unit within that area. So the camp bonus is more balanced firepower and HP than other camps. So this is a pretty good midway, you know. I've got lib infantry, I don't really know what to do with it. But this also has a smoke bomb. Now we discussed it briefly with the tech. And it says here, Camp Liberty infantry can toss smoke bombs to reset the enemy's load time, temporarily preventing them from attacking. So this is also a good option in the field. It's not particularly good if you're attacking a base because, I mean, you don't really need the smoke bomb when attacking a base. But out in the field, that's a pretty good option. Even in defense, that's a good option as well because, you know, your artillery might be on a reload. This might go off and actually stop an artillery unit attacking your base. It's a nice camp bonus. I like it. On one of my alts actually have Liberty Infantry, which is why I got so into infantry and have now moved that onto my main account. And that is the reason why this little buff right here, I think it's fantastic. Moving on to Vanguard Infantry. Again, same as before, and also the camp bonus is different this time. We have enhanced firepower, higher firepower, but lower HP than other camps. And tank killer deals more damage to armored units than infantry from other camps. So this is very, very clear a field fighting capable unit. That being said, as I did say at the start of this, concrete bunkers does mean that you can tank bases with it. They all have a basic blast mitigation of 5, so I wouldn't worry too much about the stats in terms of the infantry. It's more of the camp bonuses here. Just as a quick comparison, we've got 176 on firepower and 90 on the HP. We know lib's going to be balanced. We'll go to the other extreme. We've got 145 and 111. Mine will be buffed slightly because obviously I've got infantry tech there as well. So that brings us over to the options in the officers. What sort of options do we have? Now, obviously any infantry officer is going to be good because infantry gets massively overlooked. So there's a lot of really neat tricks you've got up your sleeve, and I mean a lot of neat tricks you've got up your sleeve. Everyone knows about Everbloom. We all know that if you're going to tank a base, you need Everbloom there. It's because of the shield, but it's also because you get a blast mitigation of 50%, with a bonus to 10% HP. On top of that, we've got bonus firepower, we've got skill damage resilience, which is obviously very key if you're tanking a base. The shield coefficient is increased by 25%. Live Another Day is the real reason why we're here though. It increases the damage resistance of the officer's troop by 10%. For every 10% of the HP this troop loses, you get a bonus resistance increase of 5% up to 20%. So that means if you lose 40% HP, you're going to gain 20% damage resistance. That doesn't sound that great, but trust me, that's pretty OP, right? Now, a lot of people like to pair with Lonesome Star. They changed Lonesome Star, so the video that I have done on Lonesome Star is not particularly relevant. Increases the officer's skill resilience of this infantry troop by 10%. Non-fortification type allies protected by this infantry troop receive a damage intensity effect reduced by 2%. Again, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it can make the difference. We also have a blast mitigation and HP buff. We also have the bonus shield coefficient that could be triggered once every 8 seconds for 2 seconds, which is nice, gives your unit a bit of survivability. We also get a damage coefficiency bonus with a effectively a splash damage, where you're dealing additional coefficiency damage to other units within map grids. This is exceptionally good as a field fighting officer. Not necessarily so much for the damage reduction, but you can park this dude up to a tank, next to a tank, and he can go hammer and tongs against an enemy tank pretty effectively. Especially if you stick him on a vanguard unit. So, Iron Bastion is a pretty good field fighter, and he's pretty good at damaging bases. Not necessarily tanking them, but we do get a bonus of 1,300 coefficiency that goes up by an additional 50% if we are hitting a fortification. So obviously that'll be infantry in a bunker, or that'll be a player base. So if you stick both this chap in as the aide, and you've got Lonesome Star in as the captain, or the other way around, depending on how you want the skills to go and in what order. You probably want this guy first, if I'm honest, and then Lonesome Star probably second. That is going to be a really good field fighting unit. You're going to deal a lot of coefficiency damage. It's not going to be overly effective at tanking a base, but it's gonna act kind of like an MBT in the way that, like, you know how a really, if the super heavy dies and then all of a sudden it targets a really tough MBT, you get an extra couple of seconds for your artillery to pop off a few more rounds before they get hit by something else. That's effectively what you're doing here if you use a vanguard infantry and those two. So this guy is really good. Don't underestimate him. Just don't. We get a lot of, if we're using the pair of these officers paired, we're getting a bit of damage intensity, we're getting a lot of skill damage coefficiency, which for infantry can be quite good. Ish. Ish. Now, I have had people tell me that I was too harsh on the Herald of Peace video. To be honest, I'm not really interested in covering this officer at all. I don't think he's that good. I think he's got good skills that you can train in onto other infantry officers, and that's probably it. Please ignore the fact that he's training Tiger Marauder, and please ignore the fact that you've seen Tiger Marauder. Tiger Marauder does not exist. Now, here's an idea. You're field fighting with your infantry. You're using Vanguard. We know that infantry can get a speed boost through their tech tree. We know that they get critical strike if you're using Vanguard. So why not leverage that critical strike? Why not put a critical strike versatile officer that has speed, damage intensity? Consider it. Consider it. That's all I say. Just consider it. You're not gonna chase down the world with it, but with that bunker protection, again, if it's on the front line, if it's in a field fighting unit and that bunker protection is in play, that infantry could be really powerful with Lonesome Star and Lady Justice. I can see it now. You've got critical strike on this officer. You've got critical strike bonuses from the tech. Push comes to shove, you could tank a base Not very effectively, but you would have a lot of resilience there from the tech tree. There's a lot of resilience and HP boosters in the tech tree for infantry. It's almost exclusively HP and resilience boosters or intensity boosters. So leverage those two things. What you want to go for, infantry out in the field. Trust me, I've seen people run infantry out in the field this L4. I've seen what they're capable of as on offensive unit in the field. They are deadly. They're slept on in silver. They are massively slept on. And of course, this officer, it gives us a critical strike rating. Like I said, critical strike, leverage that even higher. You're getting 5% plus this 15%. That's a 20%. 1 in 5 shots are going to be a crit. Infantry fire almost continuously as well. You've got to remember that. So that's going to be popping off all the time. Now, we don't really need Winter Huntsman due to the simple fact that Herb Spotter is just a wasted skill. But you could use him to use the field fighting ability to detonate landmines and disable a target. You could. Percy if. So, you have a super heavy and you're looking to capitalize on base-to-base combat. You've got 3 siege artillery, all set up for dealing damage to enemy bases. You've got no defensive artillery there. It's just pure smack down the enemy base. Use the infantry to enhance the damage reduction and enhance the damage output of friendly units. You could use Miss Percy, you could put the SH in base-to-base contact, the infantry 1 grid behind, the artillery 1 grid behind that, and then you're leveraging the 8% from Miss Percy, plus the bunker damage resistance, and a bunch of other stats depending on which infantry you go for. It's just a thought. Don't take that suggestion seriously, but I'm just opening your eyes to the possibilities of what you could use infantry for. You can use them in a supportive role. Now, in a more offensive role, you might want to consider Angel of Light, you might not. It depends how you feel about the self-healing capabilities of a unit. She does have a very nice awaken skill for infantry when this officer's infantry troop is attacked by a skill. It has a 75% chance to reduce the damage taken by 35%, can be triggered 1 time every 5 seconds. It's a 75% chance for only a 35% reduction in skill damage. And if you're really stacking that skill damage reduction on the infantry, you do have to consider her. Because you can obviously stack her alongside Everbloom, and you'll have a larger amount of skill damage reduction there at the cost of things like damage resist, obviously. So keep that in mind. Damage resistance, that leads me neatly into Vox. An amazing all-rounder, whether you're going for offensive, defensive, or tanking an enemy base with infantry. She has the capability to be extremely flexible. We do have a very defensive role here with her awakened ability, which reduces the garrison skill time by half a second, but we're also getting a damage resistance increase for the base of 30%, but we're also getting 35% in the field once every 4 seconds. Now, this is where she's better than Angel of Light in the fact that you get a 35% damage reduction, which is all sources, not just skill, all sources, once every 4 seconds. Sorry, once every 8 seconds for 4 seconds. So this, I would say this is better by a long shot. Because it doesn't just affect her when you're going into base to base. This is everything within the 1 map grid radius of the infantry. So obviously if they've got fist, and that artillery is coming in and it is targeting random units, and they are within one map grid of this infantry, they are going to receive less damage. Even though that's a random splash attack, that's less damage. It's very, very, very handy. So this is one of those occasions where tip of the spear might shine through. Because infantry, you don't have to go attack, you don't have to go defend, you can go support. You have an extremely good capability to go support. You can use tip of the spear very effectively, because it's his firepower for 2 map grids for 7% for 4 seconds, and it then additionally reduces the skill prep time of the officers leading this troop by 1.5 seconds. So if you stack him alongside Vox Veritatis, for example, or Percy, particularly Percy, you can then stack the firepower bonus between the 2 officers for the map grids. So that's really handy to use for infantry, but of course that's always going to come at the sacrifice of your infantry being able to do anything. Now, infantry isn't particularly damaging versus fortifications anyway, although you do have Iron Bastion that gives you massive leverage against fortifications. Infantry aren't really known for their siege capability. That's always going to be down to the king, the artillery pieces. But we do have options. In fact, in many ways with the infantry we have more options than what we did with the MBT, because the MBT support relied quite heavily on just a number of factors like using Vox. With the infantry, because the unit itself, once it's deployed into its bunker mode, provides a AoE effect, we can choose to stack this AoE effect in multiple ways. We can either enhance it in one area or enhance it in another. So, really good choice, believe it or not.
Grab your guns.
We also get blast damage mitigation here, which is not to be sniffed at. We can totally utilise that for infantry. Now, if you were using Vanguard infantry for field fighting and you were using or trying to utilize that crit damage output, you could use War Machine alongside Lady Liberty. We know the skill damage isn't going to be particularly high from infantry anyway, but the increased rate of fire plus the 2 critical strike stats that you'd be employing, you would be able to utilize that critical strike damage quite well. And War Machine does do that very effectively. He does have very good capability in increasing damage intensity and firepower and increasing that rate of fire. And obviously the infantry's already firing really fast, so why not make it fire faster and try and leverage that critical strike even more. So
all I want is a quiet life.
That's all of the officers and slightly different ways how we can use them. Now the scenarios. So let's be very specific. You are trying to utilize your infantry in a tanking role. So you're going to want Martyr infantry. That's determined inherently by the tech in the tech tree, and also the troop bonuses that you get through enhanced fortification and enhanced HP. You're going to need Everbloom for that shield. It gets a bonus for being on infantry. We get blast damage and HP, blast damage mitigation and in HP increase, and we also get the passive here as well, which is very good. I personally am planning on pairing Everbloom with Vox because of the layered damage resistance. Now, when you are in an AG and there is a soak AG, you can utilize your infantry, if you're controlling the soak AG, to put next to the SH, and that will enhance the SH's capability in defense. Vox will also then have an additional area of effect spell, which will then enhance the defense of that SH even further, reducing even more damage taken. So this is a really good thing to have. It also gives whoever is in control of the super heavy or soak group an option. Because if there is, say, 2 anti-tank guns and 2 helicopters in there, there's probably very little point in sending an SH in. It's going to get torn to shreds in about 3 seconds. But there's every opportunity to capitalize with infantry there, because the blast damage from the ATG does not exist. There is no blast damage from the helicopter, so it's just damage intensity versus damage resistance. And if you are stacking that high enough on your infantry, there is no way that's going to win. The infantry will live. So we have an extremely good setup to give the soak commander a option. Now obviously not everyone's going to be like mental enough to run 2 ATGs and 2 helicopters, but I have seen it in the past where you've got 1 ATG and 2 helis, or 2 ATGs and 1 heli, and on those sorts of bases you're probably going to want the infantry more than the SH, because the SH is going to get torn to shreds in about 2 seconds. Even if they've got an RL, providing you've got enough blast damage mitigation and damage resist stacked on the infantry, it's going to be the better option. And that is how I would personally tank a base with infantry, and you will see in the 2.0 that is where we're going with things. That is 100% where we're going with things. We're going for a base-to-base capability. We've built up a nice defense, and we're now going to utilize that defense and start taking it to the enemy. But I get ahead of myself. So what if we're using Liberty Infantry? How can we use Liberty Infantry? What's the best way? Well, they sit neatly in the middle of the road, so you can use them either to tank or you can use them to field. You can also use them to defend because of that smoke bomb. So let's say you don't really know what you want to do with your infantry, you just want them to help. So you've got Liberty Infantry, you just want them to help. They can go in a soak group, they can go in a field fighting group, max out that tech, just max out the tech, and then start looking for ways that you can help everyone. Lonesome Star is a great way to do that. We're dealing damage coefficiency, and we've got an additional protection there, so you know we can actually help out quite a bit. And also he gets a shield, so he's not absolutely terrible. You can put him up there, and then you can choose from there. Well, would I rather have more survivability? Well, how about stacking Angel of Light with him? You will have a all-rounder unit that does an all-rounder bunch of things. It'll be nice and dangerous out on the front line, and it'll be nice and deadly when taking on a base. It'll be fairly effective in defense. We're doing lots of things here. We're doing lots of things, and we want the infantry to represent the lots of things. So what if you are going Vanguard? Well, Vanguard, because it's damage, we have different ways in which we can apply damage. We have it in siege and fortification, or we have it in field and fighting. Either way, you're probably going to want to consider Lonesome Star. In this scenario, for example, we're going to be attacking an enemy base, but we're going to be attacking it with the field group, for example. Well, we're probably going to want Lonesome Star. And we're almost certainly going to want him paired with Iron Bastion. Now this obviously comes at the sacrifice of utilising that critical strike chance that we get through Vanguard, but because we're gearing more towards siege damage in this scenario, he's definitely going to be something that you're going to want to take on. And also don't forget guys, you can train in the critical strike rating from another officer, so you can still utilise that completely. And like I said earlier, if you were going for a field fight capability, you probably would want Lonesome Star and Lady of Justice. This combination would also be good at damaging bases because you've got two 1500 damage coefficiencies being popped off. That's not to be sniffed at. It doesn't matter what unit you're using. That's still 3000 coefficiency being laid onto the target. and also in a defensive role that's going to hurt like hell, and in an offensive role out in the field that's going to hurt even more. And remember, if you're going down that road of where you want to be more field fighting orientated with your infantry, the infantry is going to support and deal damage at the same time. So you're going to have Lady of Justice, you're going to have that 5% unit bonus for critical strike rating. Why not train in additional critical strike from another source? This will give you that capability. Or alternatively, you could use Lady of Justice and War Machine. That'll allow you to lay down the hate a hell of a lot quicker. So if you haven't guessed, the infantry is probably way more flexible than the MBT. I mean, the MBT, yes, you can tank, but it's more of an off-tank because of the penetration rating and the armour. The MBT is better at fighting other vehicles out in the field. But the infantry, I do think if your alliance hasn't got an infantry capability, if you don't have boots on the ground, I think you're going to suffer. I can see in future updates them putting in more things for infantry going forwards, and if they do choose to do that, and you haven't got an infantry capability at least somewhat ready to switch to, I think you might struggle. I can totally see infantry capability being the king of tanking in the future. Not necessarily right now. I mean, I still play silver. I don't really look into modern tech all that much. But if I was going to just purely tank, I would be definitely maxing out the advanced tree and going down the modern tanking tree for infantry. But I digress. So, what have we learnt today? We've learnt that infantry gets overlooked quite heavily for what it can do. It's not going to deal the most amount of damage on the field. It's not going to deal the most siege amount of damage against an enemy base. It's probably not even going to soak the most amount of damage from an enemy base. But it does help everything around it. And if you're prepared to look at different ways you can help your alliance rather than just help yourself, you can make your alliance a force to be reckoned with. Don't sweep infantry under the rug. Get someone, anyone you regularly play with, just to bring in infantry. Just be like, hey dude, your MBT sucks. Bring in some infantry. Anyway, I've been the Smoking Cheddar. You've been very patient. As always, a link to the Discord will be in the description box down below if you wish to come and join in the degeneracy. If you do not, that is also fine. We were playing Helldivers this morning before I went and made lunch. It was great fun. It's sunny out there. Go touch some grass. Drink that water that you should have next to you right now, and if you've got some food, make sure you've done that. Move your legs, they might be cramping. I mean, I know mine are. I've been sat here an hour. Jeez.